It's spring of the year 375 BC. A Theban armed contingent is camping in the vicinity of Lake Copaeus on their way back to their home city of Thebes. The contingent's commander, able statesman and general Pelopidas, is in the middle of inspecting his troops when some of his men spot clouds of dust looming in the distance. In a matter of minutes, it becomes clear that the enemy they tried to avoid was marching straight towards them. The scene is frantic. Men are running around the camp, putting on their helmets and preparing shields. The encounter is near. It's the first half of the 4th century BC. The inconclusive Corinthian War ended a mere 2 years earlier, and Sparta is re-established as the formal leading power of the Greek world as a result of the humiliating peace treaty dictated by Achaemenid Persia. King Artaxerxes played a clever political game, instigating, bribing, and switching sides, all to disrupt any unifying attempts between Greek city-states. Consequently, the Greek poleis became autonomic political entities under the hegemony of the kings of Sparta, who were to protect and enforce peace in ancient Greece. The new rules were particularly detrimental for the city of Thebes, traditionally the leading power of the Boeotian close-knit confederacy. Now, urged to dissolve the alliance, the political influence of Thebes was chiefly reduced to barely a secondary power. Theban authorities were certainly not happy on how things stood, but the worst was yet to come. The Spartans eagerly used their favorable position to launch a number of campaigns against the city-states, which they deemed as political threats. One such campaign took place in 382 BC, aiming to dissolve the rising Chalcidian League to the north. As the land route to northern Greece went through Boeotia, the Spartan contingent, which was sent to deal with the Chalcidians, marched in the vicinity of Thebes. Acting against his orders, the Spartan commander was invited to the city by a pro-Spartan faction. Taking advantage of this situation, the commander seized the Theban Acropolis and installed a Spartan garrison, essentially bringing Thebes under direct Spartan control. This was obviously an outrageous act, and the Spartan commander was soon relieved of his position. But the pro-Laconian government lingered and continued to hold Thebes, openly violating the terms of the king's peace, and in turn, alienating other Greek cities. This state of affairs went on for a couple of years. Theban opposition sought refuge in nearby Athens, where they forged a conspiracy to eventually liberate their home city. This is where we meet Pelopidas, gifted Theban statesman and general, who rose to the leading position among Theban exiles in Athens. Pelopidas masterminded the plan of rebellion against the Spartan government in Thebes, and in December of 379 BC, wheels were set in motion. His party was able to infiltrate the city, kill chief political opponents, and incite an anti-Spartan revolt, which subsequently ejected the surprised Spartan garrison from Thebes. Thanks to this swift action, in the course of the next few years, Thebans endeavored to revive the Boeotian League and reinstitute their city as a major power in the region, with the notable leadership of Epaminondas, another skilled Theban statesman and a close friend of Pelopidas. Although both leaders initially hoped to stay on good terms with Sparta, at least until the moment when they were strong enough to openly challenge Spartan hegemony, the Spartans didn't drag too long with their reaction, and as soon as news about the Theban revolt came in, both Spartan kings prepared a military campaign to bring Thebes back to heel. Both Cleombrotus and Agesilaus led their armies to Thebes in subsequent years, achieving some success by ravaging the Boeotian countryside. But the Thebans managed to garner the help of Athens and built a series of defensive fortifications to protect their most valuable lands. King Agesilaus eventually worked out a solution to get through these earthworks, but the city refused to yield, and all he achieved was a temporary disruption of grain supply in Thebes. Moreover, Agesilaus's ongoing inability to subdue his enemy caused many poleis in Boeotia to abandon the Spartan cause and join Thebes instead, strengthening their recently reactivated confederacy. That made Agesilaus' attempt to quell the rebels significantly harder, though the Spartan forces still remained the dominant power in the region. In the spring of 375 BC, Pelopidas decided to take advantage of the more favorable political landscape in Boeotia and prepared to liberate the city of Orchomenos, which remained one of the last two nearby cities under Spartan control. Knowing that Orchomenos was most likely not defended, as its garrison was out on a peacekeeping mission in eastern Locris to the north, Pelopidas mustered 300 elite hoplites and 200 cavalry, a force he probably hoped would be reinforced by city dwellers once they reached their target. The Theban force departed the city and marched around the eastern and northern sides of Lake Copaeus. As they approached Orchomenos, Pelopidas received scouts' reports that the city had just been garrisoned by a fresh Spartan contingent, news which essentially crushed Pelopidas' plans to free it, as the Theban numbers were simply too low to attempt to storm the city's walls. Having no other choice, Pelopidas chose to not risk the life of his men and commanded a retreat back to Thebes. But just when the Theban force was passing by the town of Tegera, another armed column loomed on the horizon, marching south. Surprisingly, the force was comprised of 2 Spartan Mori, who were marching back from Locris and were equally surprised to run into the Theban contingent. The impending clash between the two forces was inevitable. Although Pelopidas' force was outnumbered at least 2-1, unbeknownst to the Spartan commanders, the Theban infantry unit was not an ordinary one. It was a sacred band of Thebes, a hand-picked elite hoplite formation, allegedly consisting of 150 pairs of male lovers who were trained to face their enemy's toughest troops, slay their best men, and hopefully also their leaders. Pelopidas' plan was obviously built around this particular unit of the Sacred Band of Thebes, and with accompanying cavalry to protect the flanks, the intention was for the Sacred Band to hew their way through the Spartan line, opening up their path to escape. As the lines were formed, the Spartans advanced, confident in their numbers and the fearsome reputation of their fierce warriors. Soon both sides were met in battle, and the plain was filled with the sounds of their struggle. Shields shattered and spears were shaken as Spartan warriors struggled to push back the enemy's line. But much to the Spartans' surprise, Pelopidas' line stood firmly and instead of faltering, constantly pushed forward, soon managing to kill the Spartan commanders. As the 2 Spartan polemarchs were slain, morale dropped drastically in the Spartan ranks. Subsequently, sustained Theban pressure and increased casualties on the Spartan side opened a gap in the center of the clash, and Pelopidas' men were able to pour through the hole and attack the enemy's vulnerable flanks. A crucial turning point had been reached. Leaderless and at a tactical disadvantage, the Spartan units began an uncoordinated retreat from the battlefield, leaving Pelopidas victorious on the field. The Theban general ordered his cavalry to pursue for a short distance, but being worried that the Spartan garrison at Orchomenos could have been pursuing his force, he decided to give up his advantage and prepared instead to march back to Thebes. The Battle of Tegera was by no means a large-scale encounter that turned the balance of power in ancient Greece, yet it served as a symbolic event, being one of the first occasions that the numerically superior Spartan force was defeated in pitched battle. Thus the luster of Spartan invincibility was marred by a significant dent, while at the same time, Theban morale received a considerable boost. The war for dominance in Boeotia and hegemony over Greece was certainly far from over.